brainstorm.
Today's episode of Killer Biographies is brought to you by Rapid City Laundry, located at 312 Main Street, with free pickup and delivery to Ashland Heights, Box Elder, and Somerset. Mention Killer Biographies to receive 15% off all dry cleaning or fluff and fold orders. Comforters and decorative drapery excluded. Rapid City Laundry, keeping the Rapid Valley stain-free since 1928. Dr. Troyer, episode 11, we're turning it up to 11.
Yeah, it's always a good habit. Turn it up to 11. But another habit which I like is you tell us some of the fun places people are listening to us from.
Yeah, and this week is exciting because I was browsing the list in our stats, it lists all the locations, and I did notice a bit of a theme. And so this week's segment will contain that theme. So let's see if you can figure it out. To start, let's say hello to our friends in Kittery, Maine.
Fantastic. Yeah. Hello, Kittery, Maine. Maine is another state where I worked as a newspaper reporter. I was working for the Portland Press Herald, but I was based initially in Brunswick, Maine, right across the street from Bowdoin College.
Wow.
And then was switched down to the Portland office. I will say this. My first newspaper job was in California. My third one was in Florida. Sandwiched in between those was Maine. Maine is a great state to live in. It's a crappy state to be a newspaper reporter. Like there's because California and Florida stuff's always breaking loose. Like there's just always something crazy happening in Florida or California.
Right. Car chases.
Yeah. Maine, it's just, there probably is crazy stuff happening, but it's more sort of like behind closed doors and nobody's talking about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it has to do with fisheries or timber, and it's not as exciting as when it's like, I don't know, the inner cities.
Yeah. I wrote a few fisheries stories. Okay, Kittery, Maine, welcome. That's fantastic. And I like it because my name is Kit. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. There we go. Let's also say hello to our friends in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada.
Okay, I see where we're going with this. Yeah. And that also confirms that we really do consistently pull from Canada. All right, go ahead.
I've noticed that. Yeah, there's a lot of Canadian listeners, which I'm super excited about. I love Canada. So hello to Kitchener, Ontario. And then let's also say hello to our friends in Kitzingen, Bavaria. That's Germany. Yes.
Really?
Kitzingen. It's in a town in the German state of Bavaria. It's the capital of the district, which is also known as Kitzingen. And it's a vineyard area surrounded by vineyards. I looked it up because I was so surprised.
Fantastic. So all three towns begin with Kit. I like the name Kit.
Yep.
Thank you. Welcome to all those listeners, and fun that we continue to draw an international audience. We must be doing something correctly.
I agree. So now, did you have a chance? I know last week you were remiss. You didn't have the opportunity to look at the email. Anything in the inbox this week?
Well, yeah, we got some input. I'm not sure how to categorize it.
Charlotte?
I'm not going to give this person's name because it is
not Charlotte in England.
Somewhat. Hello to Charlotte in England. She qualifies as a friend of the pod. This email singled out a couple of recent moments in podcast one, my discussion of the physical appearance of Cleopatra, then also some other, parts recently. And it says that sometimes the show has Anglo-centric overtones, practicing gazing and othering from a white dominant perspective.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wait, have we been Me Too? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
What does this mean? That sounds serious. But it also sounds like a survey course in college. What did you say? Anthropomorphic. What was that? What did we do?
That was well, we had Anglo-centric overtones.
We need Dr. Leakey as a guest. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah. We were practicing gazing and othering from a white dominant perspective. I had the same reaction. I was like, yeah, Jesus, point well taken. I'm glad this person pointed it out, but I also feel like they should probably get back to their, just making sure they're doing all their schoolwork for this semester, turn the papers in, just make sure you graduate.
I don't know about all that Anglo-centric, but we very well could have done it inadvertently.
Yeah, I think it was when I kept insisting that Cleopatra was super hot.
You
And
did emphatically make that declarative statement many times.
yeah, and I guess the point is this listener was saying, yeah, we shouldn't say that, and that she was an important historical figure, a queen, a forceful leader, a strategic thing. She's all these other things, and I'm talking about what she looked like. So
Right, you're objectifying her to that extent.
Yeah, that's what we used to say in the 1980s, but apparently now it's gazing and othering. So guilty as charged.
We can
do
evolve.
better.
We can evolve. We take criticism. We don't take it lightly, but we do take it. So yeah, we will be better moving forward.
We don't take it lightly, and we don't take it to the bank.
No, we never would do that. We listen and we take it seriously, but that's where the buck stops with us. Okay.
Yeah.
So
we're all about growing. We're all about growing.
I am waiting for my next growth spurt. Yeah.
Let me ask you what, if you can remember, what were you doing back in, say, like the spring of 1972?
So I was very young, 4 years old, roughly. Yeah, probably not doing a whole heck of a lot, right? Like watching Mr. Rogers. I don't know.
Yeah, I was getting ready to run through a glass door at my house in Chevy Chase, Maryland. But I would like, just as a...
It's actually true, though. You did do that.
Yeah, I'm still not sure why. I would like, just as a thought experiment, pretend that instead of being little, 4-year-old Illinois resident, you were 18-year-old, your voting age. Okay.
Nixon. This is going to be a big election, right? Coming up for re-election.
Big election coming up. But before we even get to Nixon, just as a part of the thought experiment, let's pretend that you're not only a voting age, but you've registered as a Democrat.
Okay.
I want to run through some names, just some names who are competing to be the party's nominee that year against Richard Nixon.
Okay.
And just get an idea who you would have voted for. We got George McGovern. He's the senator from South Dakota.
All right, I get him confused with Hubert Humphrey.
Yeah, well, that was another one of the guys. Well, South Dakota, is that where Rapid City Laundry is? Or is that North Dakota?
Yeah, no, South Dakota. Not far from Spearfish, but yeah.
It's near Box Elder, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
They have the free delivery to Box Elder, actually.
Now, McGovern, yeah, he's a major candidate. He's a senator. We got to take him seriously. You mentioned another guy, Hubert Humphrey.
Yes, Minnesota?
Yeah, he's Minnesota. Yeah. Very good. I'm impressed. Yeah. I mean, I'm just doing this off the cuff.
Well, Midwest, we learn about these things.
Yeah, but this was 72. You were only 4 years old.
Yeah.
One of the things, sure. One of the things Humphrey has going for him is he was the vice president under Lyndon B. Johnson. So he's got some experience. Who else we got running? Okay, we already mentioned the state of Maine today, and one of the contestants is Senator Edmund Muskie from Maine.
Oh, yes. Now, he comes up in politics later on, right?
Oh, I feel like maybe you're right. I think he was Secretary of State for a couple of years for Reagan. So we gotta pay attention to that guy. Then there's a guy who's got a great nickname. He's Senator Henry Scoop Jackson.
Scoop. Was he a reporter?
He's from Washington State. No, although I once worked with an 80-something-year-old reporter in Michigan whose nickname was Scoop. He was Scoop Turner.
Right. That's kind of like Springfield. Every state has a Springfield. Every news desk has a Scoop, right? Like there's a lot of scoops.
Yeah, but this guy, I mean, he was Scoop initially because he was a reporter, but he also had like the most pronounced scoliosis you've ever seen. He later was sort of Scoop because he was shaped like a scoop.
Okay. I thought you were going to say he worked in like an ice cream shop. It's like, so he was like, you won't believe why they call him Scoop. Well, because he was a reporter. No, but he also owned an ice cream shop.
I won't go through every name. There were like upwards of 13. Let's see. Anybody else interesting here? This was
in the primary. So this is who's going to run against Nixon.
There's the mayor of New York City, John Lindsay. He brings the movie star kind of leading man, good looks to the race. Yeah. Who else we got? We got the hard drinking Wilbur Mills, who was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. Liked to have a drink now and again. on, sometimes after work, sometimes during work.
Hello.
Hello.
5 o'clock somewhere. But we know that it ended up being McGovern, right? Like, because so where's the suspense here? Like, you have all these guys running in the primary, but we know how this is going to end.
Hold on a second. So
Okay.
now, if you just transport your little 4-year-old self from Chicago right now to the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York.
Yes.
Bed-Stuy for the initiated.
Yeah.
During that spring, you might well have heard a sound truck coming through the neighborhood, and they would have been broadcasting loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, watch out. This is Fighting Shirley Chisholm coming through."
Chisholm Trail?
Very good.
Well, isn't that like a famous...
Yeah, that was part of her slogan. So, one of the candidates that year was Shirley Chisholm, and I want to tell you a little bit more about her because I think she's somebody we need to know more about. All right.
Is this the biography?
This is the biography. And now I'm going to go back to the beginning. Shirley Chisholm. And already I'm impressed at your political knowledge of 1972, by the way.
Well, thank you. Well, but the Chisholm Trail, that's like a famous trail, right? It's like
more of like a slow. Maybe there is the famous Chisholm Trail, and then
it is the Ranters. Yeah, there's a reference to it in Diner. They mentioned the Chisholm Trail. Anyways,
okay, but she also co-opts it for her campaign. So she
talked about no idea about.
So I was like, oh my God. Okay.
No, I didn't know that.
This might suck. He might know more about Shirley Chisholm than I do.
No, never heard of her. But I just I know that there's the trail. I thought honestly, if you would have told me the trail was named after her, I would have been like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
I think that the confusion stems from that trail probably already existed, and then during her campaign, she kept asking people to join her on the Chisholm Trail.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
It's all coming together.
I mean, it's a bit of a stretch, right? Because it's like, wait, Shirley, are you inviting us to go on like one of those ranching trips where we're going to follow you down the Chisholm Trail? Or is this, Yeah,
exactly. And then it's like, okay, did I bring enough water? Do I have like...
I don't have 4 months to go on this trail with you. Like I thought, am I just voting or do I actually have to go to Wyoming?
Yeah, like if it's a day hike, I can definitely join you on the Chisholm Trail. If it's backpacking, probably not.
Yeah, so when you said Chisholm, you're not talking like recreating some sort of post-Civil War era cattle ranching adventure, right? Like you're just saying, like let's go along with your ideas.
Exactly. Okay, so now that we've just we skipped ahead, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the very beginning because, as Julie Andrews says, that's a very good place to start. Shirley Chisholm was born in Brooklyn, New York, November 30th, 1924. Her full name at birth is Shirley Anita St. Hill.
St. Hill. Now, you mentioned in the tease last week that there was going to be a connection to Barbados.
Man.
So far, I'm not hearing them, but I'm guessing there's going to be. But this is interesting because I thought it was going to be someone from Barbados.
You are locked in. Okay. Born in Brooklyn, oldest of several siblings. Her mom is a cleaning lady, cleans houses, businesses. Her dad works at a place where they manufacture burlap sacks. That was back in the day when people were still manufacturing some burlap sacks. A couple of hardworking parents, but by the time they've got 3 young girls, they're starting to get concerned. Listen, our dream is to own a home in Brooklyn, and we're not making a ton of money, and but both parents are working. And that creates problems for childcare and all that. So the mom says, this is what we're going to do. November 29, Shirley turns 5 years old. She has 2 younger sisters at that point. And the mom informs Shirley and her little sisters, you guys are taking a trip to the Caribbean.
Oh, lovely.
You are going to go.
I hope it's not a cruise. I hope it's not a cruise. Those things, they sound good, but I'm telling... Oh, they go on a cruise?
They do go on a boat, but it's not a cruise.
Okay.
And they're going back to mom's home country, which is Barbados.
I knew it. Okay, so her mom is from Barbados, living in Brooklyn.
Her mom's from Barbados. And if you, just to orient people, Barbados, for those who haven't been, it's technically not the Caribbean. It's basically the Caribbean, but it's technically considered an Atlantic island. It's like a little bit south of the Caribbean and a little bit separate. So it's kind of its own little thing. So Shirley's mom is originally from Barbados.
How old was Shirley's mom when she moved to Brooklyn or to New York?
Oh, that's a good question. That's outside our purview today, by
Perfect.
which I mean I didn't do that
But
research.
she had her children while she was living in New York.
In America. And the dad is from what was then called British Guyana. It's sort of like on the north coast of South Africa. I mean, rather South America. So it's like next to like Suriname and Trinidad and Tobago and all that stuff. They send the 3 girls down to Barbados, and they're going to live with their grandmother, whose name is Emmeline Seal, Grandma Seal, and with one aunt. And the idea is mom and dad are going to stay, work hard in Brooklyn. They're not going to have to worry about childcare. They're going to be able to save some money. The 3 kids can live much cheaper in Barbados. Plus, will be built-in childcare of the grandmother and the aunt. And the kids can go to the same like one-room schoolhouse, which is a sort of like British model of education, which is in a village outside Christchurch, which is like on the southern edge, the southern part of Barbados. Okay,
Got it.
and they're gonna live there for 4 or 5 years. This winds up being a very formative influence because this is the first time she realizes that she's actually quite good at school, and she kind of like flourishes at school, even though it's quite a strict school and the teachers are really hardcore. She does well there. And in fact, she says much later in life, if I speak and write easily now, that early education is the main reason.
Like, I wonder what made it such a great education, like what they were doing that was different than what she would have had in Brooklyn.
Mainly corporal punishment, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fear and intimidation are okay to be used as a teaching technique.
Whenever I see a kids band or like the Jackson 5 back in the day, like a band that's just really tight, like everything is just like right on time, I always assume that there's physical abuse involved. So clearly from that quote, she really did well at that school. It was a formative influence. And she also said that the home life also was important. She said, Granny gave me strength, dignity, and love. I learned from an early age that I was somebody. I didn't need the Black Revolution to tell me that.
Right. Yeah, I feel like grandparents make better parents because they have all that experience. So they made all the mistakes with their first kids, and if they get a chance, they can probably do much better things with the second set of kids.
100%. Well said.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So she was there from age like 5 to 10, like formative early education years.
Yes. And, it's a vibe. I haven't been to Barbados. Apparently, different islands have different vibes. It's not a Jamaica vibe. In fact, some people compare it more to like Scotland. Like it's kind of flinty. It's like the people, like their motto down there is like pride and industry. Like, they're just kind of like
and grapefruit. I read that's where the grapefruit came from.
Oh, is that true? I love
which is fantastic. It's a hybrid fruit. Like they blended it out of Barbados.
It is the best fruit. 1934, and it's great. She's learning big words. She's occasionally probably getting rapped on the knuckles at school, but she learns a lot down there. And when she comes back in 1934 with her sisters, they rejoin the family in Brooklyn. And she goes to school and she's just killing it. I mean, because she's discovered at a young age, I'm good at this. I'm good at speaking. I'm good at writing. I'm good at remembering words, learning new words, what they mean. She's a standout student.
Right. And has the fortitude to want to actually excel. Like, because you could be aware of that, but then it's like, whatever, I'm going to phone that in.
Boom. Fortitude and hardworking are very good descriptions of her. She is physically tiny. She's like one of those just like Spitfires. Like she's short, she's slender, but like all the energy in the world and a mouth on her. I mean, like just very good at speaking, like good, strong speaking voice. She goes to a high school in Brooklyn called the Girls High School. They keep it simple with the name, the Girls High School.
Yeah.
It's just fewer letters for the nameplate out front. It's just like Girls High School.
Right.
I mean, maybe it used to be named something Girls High School, but it's just some of the letters have come off by then. It's a highly regarded integrated school. She's a standout student. And evidence for this is in the fact that when she graduates, she gets accepted and offered full scholarships at both Vassar and Oberlin colleges.
So she can go to either school for free.
Exactly. And her parents, unfortunately, say, listen, great job, amazing, but even just the cost of room and board is really going to leave us strapped. They talk her into attending Brooklyn College instead.
That's the same as her potential future running mate, right? Because Nixon in Whittier got into Harvard on or got scholarship money or whatever, and his parents couldn't afford to send him there. So he went to Whittier College. Yeah.
Did not know that.
He couldn't enroll at Harvard. So she goes to Brooklyn College. So she goes to Brooklyn College.
Goes to Brooklyn College. At Brooklyn College, she majors in sociology. She minors in the Spanish language, and I don't know whether it's from also living in Barbados, but she's fluent in Spanish as well as English. She's a prize-winning debater, and indeed, it's one of the professors at Brooklyn Colleges who says, you ought to go into politics. You're very good at talking. You're very good at arguing. You ought to go into politics.
Right. So they knew very early on.
Well, that's what this one white, I think maybe he's Jewish, professor says to her, but she says, okay, you got to be high if you think a black woman could go into politics. She says, at that time there's basically one job open to an educated black woman, and that was in teaching. Mm-hmm. She said, it wasn't a written rule, but she said I was black and I didn't need anybody to draw a diagram for me, so I went to work as a teacher's aide at the Mount Cavalry Child Care Center in Harlem. She winds up teaching there from 1946 to 1953. And while during those 7 years of teaching, she also sneaks over there to Columbia, which is also in Harlem, and she gets a master's degree in education.
Of course she does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like you can't hold someone like that back, even with the obstacles she was clearly facing.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about 300 years ago.
Dude, it's like at that point, 46, when she graduates from college, it's like, 26 years after American women got the right to vote.
It's insane.
She's got a lot going on. So she's teaching school. You imagine she's a great teacher. I mean, she already had that experience at a strict school growing up.
Someone you'd probably want to impress, like not screw around.
Speaking of somebody you want to impress, she meets a guy named Conrad Chisholm, an immigrant from Jamaica.
I see where this is going.
She likes the cut of his jib. They get hitched. They have a big, large West Indian style wedding.
I thought you were going to say Western. I was like, well, Chisholm Trail. But he clearly is not related to the Chisholm Trail.
No, West Indian. Barbados is in the West Indies. It's part of the Lesser Antilles, and that's no disrespect intended, but that's just what they're called, the lesser ones.
We all have our burden to bear.
Including the Antilles. Cut it in half, so we're going to just be called the Lesser? No, dude, the other half. So we'll just be the Antilles. During their marriage, she suffers, unfortunately, 2 miscarriages, so that's a bummer.
No.
And they never do end up having kids, and that is a source of disappointment to them. But some people in evaluating her life say it was also just part of the equation with what a big career started to open up for her.
Right.
And I say that because
that's true. Yeah.
In the 1950s, she starts to become sort of involved in local black politics in New York City. In 1964, this is right after Kennedy, unfortunately, is assassinated. And at the time of the passing of the Civil Rights Act, she decides to run for office herself. And she says, I'm going to start out running for the state legislature in New York State. It's called the State Assembly there. 64, and beginner's luck, she wins that. She is a member of the state legislature in New York in 1964. So she's
40.
Off to a hot start. Very good, by the way. Way to keep track. Later as her political career develops, she makes a point of telling people, as bad as the discrimination I've received for being a black person is, really the discrimination I've received for being a woman has been worse.
Right.
And she said, one time she's out campaigning in Bed-Stuy, and some old elderly black guy says, young woman, what are you doing out here in the cold? You shouldn't you be back home, taking care of your young ones, like he's concerned for her, but he can't even imagine what she's doing out there on a cold winter morning trying to drum up votes. 64, she runs for the New York State legislature. She wins. She's a fast riser. So
I knew it.
She's
of course.
She's in a hurry. So it's like some people settle in and they're like, okay, I want to get the lay of the land. She does 4
This is her whole life. Yeah.
Dude, she does 4 years at the State House and she's like, I'm good at this. I want to take this up to the next level. And she runs for the U.S. Congress in 1968.
How did I not know this? 1968?
1968. What a momentous year. It's the year that Martin Luther King gets shot to death. Bobby Kennedy Jr. gets shot to death.
The riots during the Democratic Convention in Chicago?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a tumultuous time, and she's only been in the State House 4 years in New York, but she says, I'm running for the U.S. Congress from the newly drawn 12th Congressional District in New York, and she wins.
No way.
1968, Shirley Chisholm wins. So when her term starts in early 1969, she becomes the first Black woman ever elected to the U.S. Congress.
Okay, how did I not know this? This seems impossible. Like she's the very first African-American woman to be elected to the U.S. House.
That is correct. And I will just say in your defense that you already knew much more about Shirley Chisholm and about politics in both 68 and 72 than I did. So
no, but that's incredible.
Give yourself a pat on the back.
Oh, no, I will. I'll have several, and I'll make sure that those stay in the edit. But the question is that it took till 1968 for an African-American woman to be elected to Congress? That seems really late.
Yeah, that's correct. And, in a sense, it's late, but, well, we're just getting started here. She gets to Congress. She's a little bit annoyed. She gets there and she gets assigned to the Agriculture Committee.
She's from Brooklyn.
Yeah, she's like, dude, exactly.
What is this, like patio gardens? Like, what is she going to be doing?
Yeah. She's like, I'm from Brooklyn. What gives? Like, she was really had her heart set on the Education and Labor Committee.
And probably well suited, right? She has a master's from Columbia in education.
Yeah. And
you're going to put her out on the Chisholm Trail, like figure out livestock?
She says, I don't think you understand the route of the Chisholm Trail. It doesn't go through the Agriculture Committee. She complains about her committee assignment repeatedly and loudly. However, it's an important Jewish leader back in New York, the Lubavitcher Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. Don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No, but that rolls off your tongue. Say that again?
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, that was a one-off. But his name is Menachem Schneerson, but he's like a famous rabbi in that kind of ultra-Orthodox thing. She's just very used to dealing with all different communities in Brooklyn, whether it's Hispanic, Jewish, Black, whatever.
She speaks Spanish.
She's complaining one day at some event to this rabbi, the Agriculture Committee, what in the world? And he says, maybe you can do something with surplus food. Maybe there's something that you can do where like
lemonade from lemons from Menachem Schneerson?
Yeah, the rabbi. And that does indeed become something because she later follows that thread by forging a partnership with Bob Dole from Kansas.
You're kidding.
And the two of them together.
That's an unlikely partnership. She's with Bob Dole.
Well, I mean, how about the partnership her and Rabbi Schneerson just
I can almost see that more so than Bob Dole doing something collaboratively with Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah, he's kind of, he'd almost be worth a biography himself. He's kind of an interesting guy.
Interesting person. Yeah.
Wounded in combat and all that.
Yep.
But
yeah, we respect that.
She later partners with him to help engineer the big expansion of the federal food stamps program. So, that connection between agriculture and food in the inner city does wind up coming true. But again, like I say, she's a fast riser. I can't remember. I was listening to some one of these radio hits by some young country singer the other day, and there's a lyric about it, we got a riser. And I immediately thought of her like she does not sit in one place fast. It's like 4 years in the State House. She does 4 years in the Congress. And then in January 1972, when this freaking clown car of people start announcing for the Democratic nomination for president, She's like, screw it. Yeah, I'm going to do that too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, incredible that, first of all, she is so impactful so quickly, in that a lot of what you read today is how there's people in Congress have never done anything like it for years, like where they haven't sponsored anything, they haven't done anything. And yet she's like just crushing it at such a high level so quickly.
She's not a wait in line type. She's very much like, the time is now. Let's do this.
Okay, well, hold on. Before we get to the presidential campaign of 1972,
We need to pay some bills.
We got to pay the bills.
Let's do that.
And let's pay the bills and clean things up with our good friends at Rapid City Laundry. We'll
Love
be right
those
back.
guys. Love those guys. And it's from McGovern State.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a tie-in. Not far from the Chisholm Trail, I imagine, right?
I bet McGovern had some crisp, clean dress shirts.
Yeah, let's hear from our good friends at Rapid City. Life can be messy, and if your favorite shirt gets soiled, don't let your day be spoiled. Visit Rapid City Laundry and let their expertise in dry cleaning and laundry services wash your concerns away. A proud member of the International Fabric Care Institute, Rapid City Laundry now offers free pickup and delivery in Ashland Heights, Box Elder, and Somerset. Look for their famous neon sign at 312 West Main Street, and if you mention Killer Biographies, you'll receive 20% off all Fluff and Fold services. Rapid City Laundry, keeping the Rapid Valley stain-free since 1928. All right, so it's 1972. You're telling us that Shirley Chisholm has decided, look at all these clowns running for president. I'm going to jump into the race.
Yeah, well said, and good segue. And 72, it is a crowded contest. There's no question that she understands it's a long shot candidacy. And part of her motivation is whether I win or not, I want some little black girl or little black boy to be watching TV and see one of the people on the debate stage is black. Like, that is part of her deal right off the bat. Like, I just want to show that it's possible. She wrote a fantastic memoir that kind of leads all the way up to when she announces for president. And that one is called Unbought and Unbossed. And that becomes her slogan for her campaign is Unbought and Unbossed. And in that memoir,
that holds up. Yeah,
she's a good writer. And in that memoir, she says that one of the things that she gets asked by people when she goes out speaking is, what do you Negroes want now? You all aren't doing too bad. As a matter of fact, some of you are doing a lot better than some of the white people. And what she writes in response to that is, my God, what do we want? What does any human being want? Take away an accident of pigmentation of a thin layer of our outer skin, and there is no difference between me and anyone else. All we want is for that trivial difference to make no difference at all.
Yeah, see, that's very well said. Like, that should be communicated more widely.
Yeah. She also says, listen, I'm not the candidate of Black America, although I am Black and proud, and I am not the candidate of the women's movement of this country, although I am a woman and equally proud of that. I am the candidate of the people, and my presence before you symbolizes a new era in American political history.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this. Given this is just a few years after all the turbulence that you described in 1968, was she concerned for her general safety? Because obviously this is a high-profile thing she's doing. Like, so does that scare her?
Absolutely. And it's not really coming after the turbulence because the turbulence is continuing. It's in the middle of this race. One of the other candidates for the Democratic nomination, somebody who's getting a lot of traction and doing well and just crushes the Florida primary, is the famous governor of Alabama, Governor George Wallace.
Oh, my gosh.
And his platform is segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
Holy mackerel. This is 1972 he's saying this?
Yeah.
Like, that's like the 30s, and it's like the scary times. That is insane.
So that's a different platform from hers. And the two of them become a sort of a fascinating sort of...
I thought you were going to say the best of friends. I'm like, gotta call you on that.
Lovers is what I wanted to say. They became lovers. No, they don't become the best of friends, but there's a weird sort of grudging respect between the two of them because they're both in their own ways, though they're speaking for completely different constituencies. They're both kind of straight shooters. Like they have a little bit of the thing Donald Trump has now where he'll just say the thing that out loud, the thing that other people kind of think, but they don't really want to say.
Right.
And so George Wallace, so, for instance, one of the things he says when they ask him about other candidates and they mention, well, how do you feel about sharing a, debate stage with Representative Chisholm or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, well, I'll give Shirley this, at least she says the same thing in Chicago to crowds as she does to crowds down in Tallahassee.
Right.
And he's contrasting her to other candidates and he's making the point that a lot of people are kind of pussyfooting around issues like civil rights and desegregation, depending on which part of the country they're speaking in.
But he comes from it from the point of view that, like, everyone knows I'm a racist, so I don't have to pretend. Like, I don't have to, I can say nice things about someone who's African American, and no one's going to all of a sudden think that I'm not like a deeply devoted racist.
Good point. Yeah, his praise of Shirley is coming from that rock solid confidence that the racists know
he's not going to lose that base.
Yeah, the hardcore racists know that they're a guy. And so, I'm allowed to give some grudging praise of the black woman in the race.
Well played, sir.
And for her part, she has some skepticism about white liberals generally. And in fact, whereas white liberals are like, yes, busing is the answer. We're pro busing. She's like, she goes, busing is not going to be the miracle cure. And she says, I'd just like to point out, there's no big hullabaloo about busing, when it was just black kids being bussed around. But now that some white kids might have to get bussed, now it's a big thing. But she said, it's not going to be a miracle cure. There's a lot of other things we need to do. And, one of them is like basically kind of lessening the income gap, the income inequality, making sure that schools in one part of the town are at least close to as good as the schools on the other side of town.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The systemic problems that then everything else will start to improve. But you also have to help things improve.
Yeah, and she's just a big fan of, things that are important to her have to do with like poverty, childcare, federal assistance in those areas. She's a big opponent of the Vietnam War. Now, she's not in the minority for that by that point. 72, a lot of people have turned sour on that, but she calls it an immoral war, even though she does not have a well-funded campaign, and indeed across the whole campaign only spends $300,000. She does attract some big name backers, coming from the women's movement. She's got both Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan.
Don't know Betty, but Gloria.
Yeah, Gloria and Betty are on the Chisholm Trail, so that's cool. Among actors, she has Harry Belafonte and somebody else. Is she also on the, it's interesting, in the black community, black communities like any community, it's not just a monolith. So it's not like all the black people are, throwing their support behind her. But some of the hardcore, like the Black Panthers love her. And they're all about her. And when mainstream media tries to kind of tarnish her with that and say, well, hey, what do you think about that? Some of these guys are, they're dressed up in the black leather jackets and the guns, and they're going to vote for you. Do you disavow them? She's like, no, I don't disavow them. Like, that's a sign of their intelligence, if they're voting for me. That shows that they're, somewhat well educated. Like, she's one of those people who never backs down from anything.
Right. Well, she sounds like she's very authentic. And so people pick up on the authentic nature of what she wants to do, what she's going to address. And of course she does. Like, she's one of those people that's willing to do all the kind of hard work, like, work on issues that no one really wants to work on because they're not glamorous. She's willing to go do all that work. And she also has the background. So I think people recognize that.
Yeah, exactly. And coming out of Brooklyn, she is used to sort of accepting support from wherever she can get it. So from Jews, from Hispanics, from blacks, from women's rights people.
And does she actually get to debate? Like, does she make it as far as going and debating these other Democratic candidates?
She's the first person of color ever to, participate in.
So are there clips of this? Like,
you can watch her in the debate. You gotta. In fact, this is a good time. Let's cue up the mystery sound. So that you get to hear the sound of her voice.
Here we go.
One does not learn, nor does one assist in the struggle by standing on the sidelines, constantly complaining and criticizing. One learns by participating in the situation, listening, observing, and then acting.
My impression of how she comes across, like I said, physically tiny, great fashion sense, like really kind of like loud, stylish outfits. She got all the hair kind of piled up on the top of her head, like just a total spitfire. She's got this weird thing. It's like, I think maybe it's a lateral lisp. It's like the slightest of speech impediments, which is, gives her a unique sound. But she
sounds very authoritative. Like she sounds like
so
she knows what she's talking about. Like,
authoritative.
don't question her because she'll come at you.
And it does, whether she's on the debate stage or whether she's on the streets of Brooklyn and trying to like speak over the noise of buses, like she's got a loud voice. And she herself says one of her main tools and weapons is her mouth. Great speaker. Great smile.
But smart, articulate people can be annoying sometimes. So she has to be careful. Because, I mean, just generally, it's like, okay.
100%. In fact, I read all about her. I read, books. I got all inspired. I watched some of the clips on YouTube and I was like, oh yeah, she's kind of annoying.
Right.
Like she's inspiring.
That's she's so right. Like she knows she's right. It's like
she's inspiring.
Yes, you're right. Go do the hard work.
She's right on all the things. And it's also like a little bit of a rat-a-tat-tat delivery. It's like with all these big words in a row. So she's like,
slow down. Sure.
Yeah. She's like, I've always said it. She's like, I've always said it's about the education and the inculcation and the, but it's like that. But just utterly fearless. So it's 72.
That's what I mean. Running for president, that really exposes yourself.
I mean, you don't have to read all the history books to know that, okay, Medgar Evers has been shot, Malcolm X has been shot, Martin Luther King has been shot, a whole bunch of nameless, just regular old black people down south have been lynched.
Yep.
And so one of the things, there are a few confirmed, like credible threats on her life. And she's kind of putting through the word to, I don't know who's in charge. It might be like it is now where the president, the incumbent president gets to decide who gets Secret Service protection. She basically is not getting it until, and her husband Conrad has to be her bodyguard, has to do her, like advanced security work, and which is pretty hairy when you get down
that
to
doesn't sound secure. Yeah.
I mean, he's a private, one of his day job, he's a private eye who specializes in like lawsuits, negligence lawsuits, insurance lawsuits. So he knows his way around cops and stuff like that. But like when she will go down and campaign in Florida, there are people in North Florida who cannot believe she gives a speech on some courthouse steps, and there literally is like, an elderly African-American person in the audience who supposedly has tears like in her eyes and says to a New York Times reporter, it wasn't too many years ago where a black person speaking on these steps would have been shot, if not strung up.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So people are flabbergasted to see her just come down here with, the mouth from Brooklyn down here in Florida, just, telling it like it is. So that brings us to May 15th of 1972.
Mm-hmm.
And one of her competitors, Governor George Wallace, is up in my home state. He's in Maryland. He's in Laurel, Maryland at a campaign stop. And he gets shot 4 times by a mentally ill young man from Wisconsin named Arthur Bremer. And Wallace survives the shooting narrowly, but is paralyzed for the rest of his life from the waist down. Guess who goes and visits him in the hospital?
I'm going to have to guess Shirley Chisholm.
She sure does.
Wow.
He is flabbergasted and brought to tears. He's in a very vulnerable state anyway, and he almost died. He cannot believe he's there in the hospital room. She plays it off. She says, look, this could just as easily have happened to me, but I'm very sorry that it happened to you.
Wow.
And he says, Shirley, what are your people going to think? Does anybody know you're here? And she says, effectively, I don't give a damn what people think. It's the right thing to do, and that's why I'm here. I hope you get better.
Incredible.
That becomes important later on. George Wallace, he had been a freaking freight train he was a force. So it's like McGovern and Humphrey and Wallace are getting the lion's share of the votes. And Wallace was no joke, even though you think, wait a minute, so this weird, like, redneck, racist, guy from the South, he's running for the Democratic, but you forget, Democratic politics down South, it's not, it's an ambiguous thing when you're a Democrat coming from the South.
Like the Dixiecrats. Yeah,
exactly. And Wallace is doing well. He gets shot and suddenly he's not doing well. That effectively ends his candidacy as a significant threat, because it's like, would he even be able to be president? You know what I mean? Let alone, campaign. Right.
Right. But he was like a really scary person. Like the stories about him back in Alabama. I mean, scary stuff.
Another guy that is worthy of his own biography, because him getting shot and paralyzed becomes his come to Jesus moment, and he really undergoes a transformation. There's a great book which his daughter Peggy Wallace later writes about him. He becomes, he helps Shirley Chisholm later in her legislative career. I forget, she has some important piece of legislation she's trying to get passed, and who does she go to but George Wallace to line up the votes from the South? And he says, of course, Shirley, anything Shirley wants.
He literally, like, physically blocked African Americans from coming into University of Alabama.
Yeah.
Like, you can't say oh, that was a mistake, I was just standing there, I didn't know they wanted to pass me. Like, but
he was an interesting guy. Like, early on he was kind of a progressive, and then he got his ass kicked in one race, and he's like, okay, I'm never gonna let that happen again. And he sees which way the winds are blowing, and he says, racism is the way to get elected, and he really goes hard. And you're right, that's his slogan: segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, until he gets shot 4 times and almost dies, and he almost has kind of like a religious reaction to it. And he makes a point then he keeps getting elected to governor of Alabama. He winds up serving 4 or 5 terms, and there's even either from the shooting or because he gets term limited out, they pull the scam down in Alabama where he says, okay, I'm going to run my wife, and she gets elected, but he runs the show.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So she visits him, and one of the things that happens is the day that happens, Nixon, the incumbent, says, okay, we're going to give Secret Service protection to other people who are running down lower in the rankings, like including Shirley Chisholm. Everybody's freaked out. We don't want a bunch of people starting to get picked off on the campaign trail. So that is one of the most famous moments of her candidacy, is her unexpected visit to the Holy Cross Hospital in Silver Spring, Maryland. And it's a few years later that Wallace throws his public support behind Chisholm's bill to give domestic workers the right to a minimum wage. That's a big thing with her because her mom had been a cleaning lady.
Right, of course. She's like correcting everything.
Yeah. And Wallace says whatever Shirley wants, and he lines up Southern Democrats to make sure that bill passes. So the shooting happens in May. In June, there is the debate. She does get a seat in the debate. I think she has to sue to get a seat in the debate. She goes to court, but it works. So it's kind of, even some of the people that we think of as sort of like the respected, like, lions of politics or media back in those days, like Walter Cronkite, when you look back at some of these video clips, there's a little bit of a patronizing thing. Like if you see the clip where Walter Cronkite on the evening news is saying, another person, another Democratic candidate is throwing their hat in the ring for the nomination for president, or should I say bonnet? Shirley Chisholm, and it's like,
yeah.
Maybe because the Democrats, it got a little hot under the collar in 68 in Chicago. They're like, let's take it down to Miami for 72 for the convention. Yeah, it's just more of a beach feel. And she's psyched for that. She loves the island living. She
flip-flops.
Yeah, flip-flops. She gets to wear some of her more colorful outfits. She loves to get dressed. She loves the colored outfits. She loves the big necklaces. One time she's at some event in New York, and there are some very loud vocal supporters from the gay community. And again, she's asked about it after the event. What did you think of the people from whatever group? And she says, I love their outfits. There are a couple of those outfits I would like to own myself. I'll see if I can talk to a couple of them before we leave. Good sense of humor. When they get down there to the convention, the winner, can you tell me the winner of the Democratic nomination?
Well, first of all, I'm picturing her reaching up to check the label of someone's shirt. Like, the sort of like, wait, before you leave, let me just, like, half joking, but half like, hold on, let me get my glasses.
Yeah.
what was your question?
She's good. I mean, mean, speaking of checking the she was good at retail politics. Like you see the clips of her on the campaign trail. She liked to hug people. She liked to shake hands. She liked to.
She's very authentic.
Yeah, there's a clip of some school kids who come through the Congress, and she brings them into her office, and you can see the teacher coming out where she's just asking them basic questions about like, you guys know what the 3 branches of government are? Okay, good. You got to know that. You guys know that. Like, just like awesome. Okay, who wins that Democratic nomination?
Well, McGovern.
Yes, he does. She's a little annoyed because some of the people who've been supporting her all the way along, whether it's Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, or a young guy who later becomes a congressman in his own right, Ron Dellums, some of these people, once they're getting closer to the convention and in the way that politicians do, they say, okay, well, my girl's not going to win, so maybe I'll switch over to a winning side. And they kind of throw their support behind McGovern, who's trying to get over the top. He does wind up winning. Shirley finishes 4th with a respectable 152 delegates.
Wow. Okay, not bad.
Not bad.
But she wasn't actually angry. Like, she must have known she was not going to win the nomination.
You said it. She said, I ran for this office in spite of hopeless odds to demonstrate the sheer will and refusal to accept our status quo. That's her high point.
That's like, again, like someone's got to go first, and it's super scary because you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah.
And she could just as easily have been one of the names that we reel off when we say, like, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Medgar Evers. There's no reason why she wasn't shot. Like, there were plenty of people waiting to do that to her.
But amazing that she wasn't just a presidential candidate and that's what she's famous for. She actually did a lot in Congress.
Yeah, served 14 years. I mean, people say the high point of her career was running for president because that was when she got the most attention, and that was, she was like a pop hit, rising with a bullet. She was that person who's just like, I'm going a little bit, honestly, like Barack Obama, just kind of boom, 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 boom. Why not?
So what did she do after the race?
Yeah, so she winds up serving 14 years in Congress. The critique of her is that she becomes sort of more centrist through the years, and that she loses some of the progressive oomph that she had early on. The other critique of her is she consistently will not toe the party line. Like, there's one year where she endorses Koch for mayor of New York, and people are like, what the hell? I forget who the black candidate is running against him, but they're like, what are you doing? And she's like, I don't do it based on what color their skin is.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be honest to what I'm representing.
Yeah. And so, that's one critique. There are people that were early supporters of her who either worked on her campaign or who worked on her staff in Congress, who go on to illustrious political careers of their own. There's a woman right now who is a long-time congresswoman from California named Barbara Lee. I don't know if you know her, African-American from 12th District here in California. Also, she's currently running for Senate. She was one of those people who said, yeah, I saw, that made all the difference in the world. To see a smart, courageous Black woman running for president, she's speaking better than most of these men, and certainly better than the hard drinking Wilbur Mills. So Barbara Lee is somebody who said, look, I saw her and I said, even if I never run for president, there's no reason I can't run for city council or for school board or for Congress. Barbara Lee,
the exact impact she wanted to have. Yeah.
Yeah. Another woman who says I never would have thought that any kind of public career would have been possible till I was a little kid. I saw Shirley Chisholm was the woman who wound up being the Clarence Thomas adversary, Anita Hill. She said she cites Shirley Chisholm as somebody like, I really looked up to her. She spoke her mind. She was gutsy. But speaking of gutsy, that congresswoman I mentioned, Barbara Lee, is the only member of the House, the U.S. House of Representatives, who voted against the authorization for military force in 2001 after 9/11. And she said it's an invitation just for an open-ended war that's going to go on forever. And she said, I know we're all excited about it today, but it's what we did in Vietnam. It just starts this way and it goes on forever. That woman, poor Barbara Lee, I mean, the mass of hate mail hate calls, vitriol.
She was the only one, and that's what she's so famous now for that one thing.
Yeah,
like
it's one of those
everyone
ones that,
leads with that story.
yeah, and it's one of those ones we all look back and we're like, oh, she actually was correct about that. So my point is, she was still walking the Chisholm Trail, even though Chisholm was no longer on the scene. Okay, 14 years in Congress, she starts to get sick of it. She says, look, I've done this. She knows her political high point was running for president, and she also knows she could, look, I could stay here and get elected forever from my neighborhood, but I'm not finding it as enjoyable as I used to. She's also sad to report that she does wind up getting divorced from the guy who was her bodyguard during that.
No.
She and Conrad split. It's amicable, and they remain friends. Later on, and
Okay.
there's a documentary about her, and he has really lovely things to say about her. But she winds up remarrying a guy who's a black businessman up in the Buffalo area, and so she's splitting time between like Buffalo, New York City, DC. It's a lot of travel, and the political work is not as exciting to her. And Reagan gets elected, and she's just like, this sucks. She feels like the Reagan era is not going to be a good era for black people, and she just doesn't. I mean, one of the things she keeps fighting for in the first couple of years of the Reagan era is she points out and she's perfectly situated because she came from that area, or she lived in that area as a kid. But she points out, hey, we are treating the Haitian people who immigrate to this country so much worse than we treat the Cuban people who immigrate to this country. And she beats that drum for a while, but she really hates the whole beginning of the Reagan era, and she is a little bit tired from politics. So she steps down after 14 years in Congress. She begins a career teaching. She teaches at several different colleges. She's a visiting professor. She's also a sought after speaker. Groups want her to, she's considered, like a giant of the whole civil rights sort of scene, the first
she's like an icon.
First black woman who ever was in Congress. By the time Bill Clinton gets elected, he wants to make her the U.S. ambassador to Jamaica.
Well, why not Barbados?
Well, I don't know. Good question. Or there's like some really rich person who's like got their eye on Barbados. I have to say that to me, that's an upgrade. It's like, are you kidding me?
Commenting on one, I'm just saying in terms of logically, if you're going in the Caribbean and this woman has roots and a history of growing up in Barbados, and you say, well, how about Jamaica? Then naturally you'd be like, well, why not Barbados?
I mean, my guess is that there's much better
food options.
No, weed in Jamaica than Barbados.
Yeah,
but
that's what they're known for. It's grapefruits or wheat. I get it.
And music, she apparently loved to dance. And was a great dancer, and just was tiny, but people said it was fun to watch her dance on the dance floor because she just like give her entire soul to it. So, man, ambassador to Jamaica sounds lovely to me, but she declines it. She says, my health isn't what it used to be.
She wasn't saying because you didn't offer me Barbados.
No.
But do you think she looked at her husband and was like, do you think he knows I'm from Barbados? He just offered me Jamaica. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she's trying to think, like, is there like a discreet way where we can just like get a map over to the White House?
I'm so flattered. Obviously, if I had been from Jamaica, as you know, I'm from Barbados. Okay, so she can't go though. So
she can't go. She cites health concerns. There is some evidence that, as courageous as she was as a younger woman out on the campaign trail down in North Florida in '72, she's a little bit less so in the 2000s, and there are actually some concerns, or she has some concerns about security in Jamaica. Sometimes people, as they get older, they get a little more like scared. Yeah. And so that's about that. That is, when she says no thanks to the job in Jamaica, that effectively marks the kind of the end of her public or political career. She does live to be 80 years old. She dies in Ormond Beach, Florida, where she had retired to. Loved the weather, and not far from her mom's native Barbados and her dad's native Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
And, that is the full tale. We're reaching the end of our Chisholm Trail.
That truly is incredible. Again, astounded that I did not know anything about Shirley Chisholm because she's such an icon. How did I not know? Like, is she not taught in history?
Yeah, good question. The way I landed on it is I started thinking, I was like, okay, I'm not 100% sure. I know in my mind, like, who was Shirley Chisholm and who was Barbara Jordan and who was Barbara Lee? Like, I know that they were Black women in Congress, but I kind of had some of them mixed up. Like Barbara Jordan, I thought maybe was the first Black House member. I don't know. But it was Shirley Chisholm, and she was unbought and unbossed.
You could see why she used that as her slogan.
Would you like to tease for us what is going to be the final episode of season 4? Yeah.
Final episode of this season of Killer Biographies. I'm not going to tease because it feels like the final episode should be a complete surprise.
Yeah, you're a nice guy. You don't tease. I get that.
I don't tease. I'm not a teaser. And so you'll just have to tune in the next couple of weeks for the final episode of Killer Biographies.
I plan to do that.
Fantastic episode. Again, learned a ton. Now feel better educated in my American history. Let's play our outro music, and we'll see you next time for the final episode 12 of Killer Biographies.